The first time I understood what it meant to be desired. Not needed, not convenient, not tolerated, desired. It happened on a Tuesday night, outside an Italian restaurant in the city, when a woman I barely knew leaned close to my ear and whispered words that would unravel my entire life. "You are magnificent," she said, her breath warm against my skin. "I'm enchanted by you. I want to kiss every inch of your beautiful body, slowly." And then she kissed me. Right there on the sidewalk, under the glow of the streetlights, she pressed her lips to mine and walked away, leaving me standing there trembling, my heart pounding like I was 20 again. Except I'd never felt this at 20. I'd never felt this ever. My name is Catherine Mills. I'm an architect. For 40 years, I've built homes for other people. Beautiful homes. Homes with perfect kitchens and sun-drenched living rooms and gardens that bloom in spring. I've designed spaces for families to grow, for couples to grow old together, for children to run through hallways laughing. But I never built a home for myself. I built a career instead. I poured everything I had into blueprints and elevations and client meetings. I worked 70-hour weeks. I won awards. I made a name for myself in a male-dominated field when women architects were still rare enough to be noteworthy. People respected me, admired me, hired me because they knew I'd deliver perfection every single time. And I told myself that was enough. That professional success could fill the spaces inside me that felt cold and empty and increasingly vast. The truth is, I was lonely, profoundly, achingly lonely, in a way I didn't even fully understand until much later. I've had relationships, plenty of them. I dated men throughout my 30s and 40s and into my 50s. Nice men, successful men. A lawyer named David who took me to the theater every month and bought season tickets to the symphony. A doctor named James who cooked elaborate French meals and read medical journals at breakfast. A college professor named Robert who recited poetry and had strong opinions about modern architecture that sometimes aligned with mine. These were good men, kind men, men who treated me with respect, who bought me thoughtful birthday gifts, who introduced me to their families and talked casually about future plans. We'd go on vacations together. We'd attend each other's work functions. We'd sleep together in beds that smelled like expensive hotels and clean sheets. But every single relationship followed the same inevitable pattern. Excitement at the beginning. That flutter of possibility when someone new pays attention to you. A few months of dinners and movies and conversations that felt meaningful in the moment. We'd sleep together. The sex was fine. Not painful, not unpleasant, just fine. Mechanical, but fine. Neither bad nor good. Just something we did because that's what couples do. What's expected when two adults are in a relationship. I never had an orgasm with any of them. Not once. Not with David or James or Robert or the handful of others whose names I've forgotten. I didn't fake it. I just made appropriate sounds of encouragement and waited for it to be over so I could go to the bathroom and wash up and stare at myself in the mirror and wonder what was wrong with me. And then, slowly, inevitably, the shine would wear off. The conversations would start to repeat themselves. We'd tell the same stories to the same people. The dinners would feel like obligations rather than opportunities. The sex would happen less and less frequently until it stopped altogether. And neither of us would mention it because we were both relieved. And eventually, one of us would end it. Usually me. We'd have a calm, rational conversation about how we wanted different things, or how the timing wasn't right, or how we valued each other but maybe weren't in love. We'd both walk away feeling vaguely disappointed but not heartbroken. Never heartbroken. I used to think something was fundamentally wrong with me, that I was missing some crucial piece of emotional hardware that allowed other people to fall deeply, devastatingly in love. My mother used to say I was too focused on my work, that I'd never find a husband if I kept prioritizing my career over relationships. Men want to feel important, Sarah, she'd say, using the wrong name because she was thinking about my cousin. Catherine, men want to feel like they come first. My friends said I was too picky, that I needed to lower my standards and give nice men a real chance. "You're not getting any younger," my college roommate told me at her second wedding when I was 45. Sometimes you have to compromise. But the truth I never admitted to anyone, not even myself, was simpler and more terrifying. I'd never felt truly wanted. I'd been appreciated for my intelligence, admired for my success, respected for my professionalism, valued for my reliability, but I'd never felt like someone looked at me and saw a fire they wanted to touch. Consequences be damned. I'd never felt like someone's breath caught when I walked into a room. I'd never felt like someone was hungry for me, specifically me, in a way that had nothing to do with convenience or compatibility or shared life goals. I'd never felt desired. I'm 60 now. My parents died years ago. My mother of breast cancer when I was 52, my father of what the doctors called heart failure, but what I knew was a broken heart 6 months later. I have a brother in Seattle I talk to twice a year on his birthday and Christmas. We exchange pleasantries and updates about our lives that are factually accurate but emotionally hollow. I have colleagues I respect and clients who value my work and recommend me to their wealthy friends. But I don't have friends, not really. I have a network. I have contacts. I don't have people who know me. I live in a loft in the city with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the bay and exposed brick walls and furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I have art on the walls that I bought because the gallery owner said it would appreciate in value and because the colors matched my sofa. I have a wine collection I've curated over decades. I have everything a successful woman is supposed to have. My routine is precise, controlled, exactly the same every single day. I wake up at 6 every morning to an alarm I don't need because my body has internalized the schedule. I go to the gym, 45 minutes of cardio and weights, maintaining the body that's starting to betray me with aches and stiffness no matter how much I exercise. I shower. I dress in clothes that are expensive and tasteful and completely interchangeable. I go to my office. I work until 7 or 8 at night. I eat dinner alone while watching the news, standing at my kitchen counter because sitting at the table by myself feels too pathetic, too much like admitting I'm alone. I go to bed. I do it again the next day. Weekends are the same, just without the client meetings. I work on designs, I visit project sites, I answer emails. Sometimes I go to gallery openings or charity events where I make polite conversation with people I'll never see again and go home early, relieved to be back in my beautiful, silent loft. It's a good life on paper, a successful life, a life that looks enviable from the outside, the kind of life my mother always wanted for me, even though she couldn't quite articulate what that meant. But God, it's empty. Some mornings I wake up, and the silence in my loft is so heavy I can barely breathe. I lie there staring at my ceiling, at the exposed beams I chose specifically because they felt industrial and modern, and I think, is this it? Is this all there is? 30 more years of this perfect hollow existence until my body gives out and I die alone in this expensive box? The project that changed everything started in early fall, September of a year that felt like every other year. A couple in their 40s, tech entrepreneurs named Marcus and Jennifer, who'd made a fortune in some kind of software I didn't understand and didn't need to, hired me to design their dream home in the hills overlooking the bay. They had an unlimited budget, a spectacular piece of land, and a clear vision. They wanted modern. They wanted glass and steel and clean lines. But they also wanted warmth. They wanted a house that felt connected to the landscape, that brought the outside in, that didn't feel like a cold museum. I loved the challenge. I threw myself into it the way I always do, the way I throw myself into everything, because work is the only place I feel competent and in control. I spent weeks on the initial concept, creating 3 different approaches, each one more ambitious than the last. They chose the boldest design, the one with the dramatic cantilever over the hillside, and the living room that was essentially a glass box floating above the valley. Construction began in January. Everything went smoothly. The contractors I'd worked with before were reliable. The structural engineer was brilliant. The craftsmen were skilled. We were on schedule, on budget, and the house was taking shape exactly as I'd envisioned it. By August, the house itself was essentially complete. It was stunning. It was going to be featured in Architectural Digest. It was going to win awards. And then the landscaping company I'd hired revealed themselves to be completely, catastrophically incompetent. They were supposed to start in early August. By mid-September, they still hadn't broken ground. When they finally showed up, 3 weeks late, the work was sloppy and careless. They planted trees in the wrong locations. The irrigation system they installed leaked. They paid no attention to the careful integration with the architecture that I'd specified in the plans, that I'd spent hours explaining. They were treating it like any other generic suburban yard, not like the crucial final element of a masterpiece. The clients were getting anxious. They were planning to host a major fundraising event at the house in 6 weeks, something for a children's hospital with influential donors and press coverage. They needed the landscaping done. They needed it perfect. And it was turning into a disaster. I was getting desperate. This was supposed to be my masterpiece, the project that would define the next phase of my career, that would prove I was still relevant as I moved into my 60s. I wasn't going to let some incompetent landscaping crew ruin it. I was on site one afternoon in late September, standing in the half-finished garden that looked like a construction zone, on the phone with the owner of the landscaping company, trying very hard not to scream. The conversation was going nowhere. He was making excuses, blaming delays on supply chain issues and weather and his crew being short-staffed. He clearly didn't care about my timeline or my standards. I wanted to throw my phone into the unfinished pond. One of the contractors, Miguel, a foreman I'd worked with on 3 previous projects, overheard the conversation. He was a good man, mid-50s, with a work ethic I respected and a crew that actually cared about quality. He waited until I hung up, then approached carefully, his expression sympathetic. "Forgive me for eavesdropping, Ms. Mills," he said, "but it sounds like you need a new landscaper." "I need a miracle worker," I said bitterly, gesturing at the disaster surrounding us. "I need someone who can fix this mess and finish in 5 weeks." "I know someone," he said. "She's not cheap. She'll probably cost twice what you're paying these guys, but she's the best landscaper I've ever worked with, and she doesn't miss deadlines. Ever." He pulled a business card from his wallet, slightly worn around the edges like he'd been carrying it for a while. It was simple. Cream-colored cardstock with green lettering and a small embossed leaf. Verdant Dreams Landscaping, Lily Nakamura, Principal Designer. I called her that same afternoon from my car, sitting in the driveway of the unfinished house, looking at the mess and feeling my chest tighten with anxiety. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Verdant Dreams, this is Lily." Her voice was warm, confident, with a hint of amusement underlying the professional tone, like she was genuinely happy to be answering her phone. I explained my situation, the failed landscaping company, the impossible timeline, the high-profile clients, the stakes. She listened without interrupting, making occasional sounds of understanding. When I finished, she laughed, not a mocking laugh, a knowing, sympathetic laugh that somehow made me feel less alone in my panic. "Let me guess," she said. "You hired Greenscape Solutions, and they're 3 weeks behind schedule and doing work that looks like they learned landscaping from YouTube videos." "How did you know?" "Because they do it to everyone, Catherine." "Can I call you Catherine?" She didn't wait for an answer, just continued in that warm, assured voice. They underbid to win contracts, then they overbook and underdeliver. I clean up their messes about 3 times a year. "I'd love to look at your project. Are you free tomorrow morning?" "Yes, any time." "I'll be there at 8. Text me the address. And Catherine, don't worry, we'll fix this." The confidence in her voice, the casual certainty, made something in my chest unclench slightly. I texted her the address and went home, and for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. She showed up the next morning at exactly 8 o'clock. I was already there, had been since 7, drinking bad coffee from a thermos and reviewing the plans for the 100th time. I heard her truck before I saw it. An old pickup, forest green, rumbling up the gravel drive. Not what I expected. Most landscaping companies showed up in new white trucks with company logos. This looked like something from another era, lovingly maintained. She parked and got out, and I forgot how to breathe for a moment. Lily Nakamura was 58 years old, though I didn't know that yet. She was wearing work boots that had seen serious use, canvas pants with dirt stains on the knees, and a faded blue chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her hair was silver gray, cut short in a choppy, deliberately messy style that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. She had strong hands, tanned and calloused from work, the hands of someone who actually did the labor herself rather than just directing others. But it was her eyes that stopped me. Dark brown, almost black, with a directness and warmth that felt like she could see through my professionally polished exterior straight into the lonely, aching center of me. She looked at me and smiled, and it was a real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of her eyes and showed teeth that were slightly crooked and somehow made her more beautiful. "You must be Catherine," she said, walking over with an easy, confident stride and extending her hand. "I'm Lily. Show me the disaster." Her handshake was firm, her palm warm and slightly rough. I held on a fraction of a second longer than professional, then released her hand and led her toward the garden. I walked her through the entire site, explaining what I'd wanted, what the original plan specified, what the incompetent company had delivered, what still needed to be done. She listened without interrupting, occasionally crouching down to examine a plant or test the soil with her fingers, running her hands over the earth like she was reading it. She pulled out a measuring tape and checked spacing. She took photos. She made notes on a battered tablet. When I finished my explanation, probably talking too much because I was nervous for reasons I didn't understand, she stood up, brushed the dirt off her hands onto her pants, and looked at me with those dark, direct eyes. "I can fix this," she said simply. "It'll take me 4 weeks. I'll have to bring in my full crew, and we'll be working dawn to dusk, probably some weekends. But I can make this garden sing. I can make it everything you envisioned and more." "How much?" She named a figure that made me wince internally. It was substantial, but I'd already spent so much on this project. What was another expense if it meant getting it right? "But I guarantee my work," she continued. "If you or your clients aren't happy with the final result, I don't get paid. Not a cent. That's my policy." I looked at her, this woman with dirt on her pants and confidence in her eyes, and I made a decision. "You're hired. When can you start?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll have my crew here at 7. She extended her hand again. I shook it. And when our hands met, I felt something I didn't have a name for. A warmth. A spark. Something that made me want to hold on. For the next 4 weeks, Lily and her crew transformed that garden. I stopped by every few days to check on progress, telling myself it was professional diligence, that I always monitored my projects this carefully. But the truth was, I wanted to see her. I wanted to see what she was creating. I wanted to watch her work, and every time I visited, I was stunned by what she'd accomplished. She wasn't just planting things according to a plan. She was composing, creating. She understood light and shadow in a way that reminded me of how I thought about architecture. She understood how the garden would change through the seasons, how it would look in morning fog and afternoon sun and evening twilight. She understood the relationship between the house I'd designed and the land it sat on. She got it in a way the original company never had, in a way I hadn't even fully articulated. But more than that, I started looking forward to those site visits with an intensity that should have worried me. I started finding excuses to stop by, started scheduling my other appointments around the times I knew she'd be there. Because when Lily was there, which was most of the time, she'd take a break and we'd talk. She'd explain her plant choices, why she'd positioned the Japanese maple to catch the morning light and turn brilliant red in fall, why she'd created a sunken seating area near the pond where you could hear the water without seeing the rest of the garden, why she'd chosen native plants that would attract butterflies and hummingbirds. She talked about plants like they were people, like they had personalities and preferences and moods. "This lavender is a drama queen," she said once, hands on her hips, glaring at a struggling shrub. "She wants full sun and perfect drainage, and if you even look at her wrong, she'll sulk and refuse to bloom." I laughed, genuinely laughed in a way I couldn't remember doing in months. Sounds like some of my clients. "At least plants don't send passive-aggressive emails at midnight," she said, grinning at me, "or change their minds about crucial design elements 3 weeks before deadline." She asked me questions, too, about my work, about why I became an architect, about what I loved about it, and I found myself telling her things I rarely told anyone, about how I loved creating spaces where people could feel safe and seen, about the satisfaction of watching a vision become real, of seeing families move into homes I'd designed and knowing I'd given them something beautiful, about how sometimes I'd drive past a house I'd designed years ago and feel a little swell of pride, especially if the owners had maintained it well. "You build homes for other people," she said one afternoon. We were sitting on the edge of the unfinished deck, drinking water from a cooler she kept in her truck, watching her crew work on the pond. "Do you have one for yourself?" "I have a loft," I said. "Downtown. It's nice. Good light. Good views." That's not what I asked. I looked at her. She was looking back. Those dark eyes, gentle but unflinching, seeing something in me I hadn't shown her. "No," I admitted quietly. "I don't." She didn't push. She just nodded, like she understood something about me I'd never said out loud, something I barely understood myself. The garden was finished 2 days ahead of schedule. The clients walked through it with tears streaming down their faces. Jennifer actually hugged Lily, thanking her over and over. Marcus stood looking at the view from the seating area by the pond, shaking his head in wonder. "This is perfect," he said. "This is exactly what we wanted but couldn't articulate." You understood. They wrote me a glowing review that mentioned both my architectural vision and the stunning landscaping. Within a week, I got inquiries from 3 new clients who'd heard about the project and wanted to see if I was taking on new work. I went to Lily's office the day after the final walkthrough to thank her in person and to pay her final invoice. Her office was exactly what I should have expected if I'd thought about it. A converted greenhouse attached to a garden center she owned on the edge of town, filled with plants at various stages of growth, sketches pinned to boards, seed catalogs stacked on every surface. It smelled like earth and green, growing things, and something floral I couldn't identify. She was repotting an orchid when I walked in, her hands gentle and sure as she worked the roots free from the old pot, speaking softly to the plant like she was reassuring a nervous child. "Catherine," she said, looking up with genuine pleasure lighting her face. "I was hoping you'd stop by. Did the clients love it?" "They cried," I said, smiling at the memory. "Happy tears. You saved that project, Lily. I can't thank you enough. You did something extraordinary." "It was a good collaboration," she said, setting down the orchid and wiping her hands on a towel. "Your design gave me something beautiful to work with. The house and the garden, they're in conversation with each other now. That's what makes it special." I'd rehearsed this next part in the car on the way over, practicing the words until they sounded casual and professional. "I'd like to take you to coffee," I said, "as a thank you, and also, I have 2 more projects coming up in the next few months that are going to need landscape design. I'd love to talk to you about them. See if you'd be interested." Her face lit up, that smile that made something in my chest feel warm. "I'd love that. When works for you?" "Are you free Thursday? Say 1 o'clock? "Perfect," she said. "Text me the address and I'll be there." I left feeling accomplished, professional. This was networking. This was business development. This was building a relationship with a talented collaborator I wanted to work with again. This was not me trying to spend more time with a woman who made me feel things I didn't have words for and didn't want to examine too closely. I chose a cafe near my office for Thursday. Upscale but casual. The kind of place where I took clients for informal meetings. Good coffee, excellent pastries, a lunch menu if we decided to stay. I made a reservation for a table by the window. I got there 15 minutes early, like I always do, dressed in my standard work uniform. Tailored black pants, a gray silk blouse, a structured blazer, minimal jewelry. Professional, appropriate. I ordered a cappuccino and reviewed some notes on my phone about the upcoming projects, preparing to talk business. Lily walked in at exactly 1 o'clock, and I genuinely forgot where I was for a moment. She wasn't wearing work clothes. She was wearing a dress, a deep emerald green wrap dress that brought out the warmth in her skin and fit her body like it had been made specifically for her. The color made her silver hair look luminous. She was wearing lipstick, a warm coral color that made her smile even more devastating. She had a silk scarf around her neck, patterned with birds and flowers in shades of gold and green. She looked like art. She looked like springtime. She looked like everything beautiful I'd ever tried to capture in my designs and never quite managed. She saw me, and her face broke into that smile, genuine and warm and just for me. She walked over, moving with an easy confidence, and I stood up automatically, nearly knocking over my coffee cup. She didn't shake my hand. She didn't just say hello. She leaned in close, and she kissed me on the cheek. Not a quick air kiss. A real kiss. Her lips warm and soft, lingering for just a moment near the corner of my mouth, close enough that I felt the heat of her breath and caught the scent of her perfume. Something floral and spicy and utterly intoxicating. Something that made my head spin. "Hi," she said softly, pulling back just enough to look into my eyes, her face still close to mine. "You look beautiful." I couldn't speak. My mouth had gone dry. My brain had stopped functioning. I managed something that might have been "thank you," but probably sounded more like a small animal choking. We sat down. The waitress came over almost immediately, a young woman with a bright smile who took one look at us and seemed to make an assumption about what kind of lunch this was. "Can I get you ladies started with something to drink?" she asked. I'd planned to order coffee, keep this quick and professional and focused on business. But Lily smiled at the waitress and said, "We're celebrating. I'll have a glass of the Sauvignon Blanc. Catherine?" She looked at me expectantly, those dark eyes warm and inviting, and I heard myself say, "The same, please." The waitress left. Lily leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her chin resting on her hands. "So tell me about these new projects," she said. "What are we celebrating besides our successful collaboration?" And just like that, we were talking. Not about business at first, about everything else. She asked about how I'd gotten into architecture, and instead of giving my usual polished answer about always loving design, I told her the truth. About being 8 years old and watching my father try to build a treehouse in our backyard. About how frustrated I'd gotten watching him work without a plan. About how I'd drawn my own designs on notebook paper and insisted he follow them. About how surprised we'd both been when it actually worked, when the treehouse held together and became my favorite place in the world. "You were born for this," she said. "You were born to create spaces." The wine arrived. We ordered food almost as an afterthought, things we barely touched because we were too busy talking. She told me about growing up in Northern California, the daughter of a Japanese mother and an Irish father, navigating 2 cultures and never quite fitting perfectly into either. About how she'd studied art in college, painting mostly, but found her calling in landscape design when she took a botany elective on a whim. "I realized I could paint with living things," she said. "That a garden could be a canvas that changed with the seasons, that grew and evolved. It felt more alive than anything I could do with oils and canvas." She told me about her marriage, about meeting Thomas in her mid-20s, falling in love with his kindness and his stability. About 20 years of a good marriage, Not perfect, but good, built on genuine affection and shared goals. About how a heart attack had taken him suddenly 7 years ago, leaving her alone in a house they'd bought together, surrounded by gardens they'd planned as a team. "I miss him," she said, her fingers playing with the stem of her wine glass. "But I'm grateful. A lot of people never get that kind of love even once. And grief taught me something important." "What's that?" "That life is short, that you can't waste time pretending, that you have to grab joy where you find it and hold on tight." She looked at me directly. "What about you, Catherine? Is there someone?" "No," I said. The word came out more firmly than I intended. "There have been people over the years, but nothing that lasted, nothing that felt right." "What does right feel like?" she asked. "For you?" It was such a simple question, such an impossible question. I'd never known the answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "I used to think something was wrong with me, that I was broken somehow. All my relationships follow the same pattern. Excitement at first, then it fades, like wearing shoes that are almost your size but not quite. You can walk in them, but you're always aware they don't fit." She leaned forward, and the intensity of her gaze made my breath catch. "Catherine," she said softly, "have you considered that maybe you've been wearing the wrong shoes altogether?" The question hung in the air between us. The noise of the cafe faded away. I didn't know how to answer, didn't know if she was talking about shoes anymore. 1 glass of wine turned into 2. Lunch turned into an afternoon. We ordered coffee, then dessert we shared between us. We talked about books we'd read, places we'd traveled, dreams we'd had as children, and which ones we'd managed to achieve. The conversation flowed like water, natural and easy and endlessly interesting. At some point, I looked at my phone and realized it was nearly 5 o'clock. I'd missed 2 client calls. I didn't care. "We should probably let them have this table back," I said reluctantly. Lily looked around the cafe. It was mostly empty now, the lunch crowd long gone. "Or we could stay for dinner," she suggested. "If you're free?" I had no plans. I never had plans. My evening would have been working at my desk until 8, eating takeout alone, going to bed. "I'm free," I said. So we stayed. The cafe transformed as evening came. The harsh afternoon light softened. Candles appeared on the tables. The menu changed. We ordered dinner. Something light because we'd been eating all afternoon. We ordered another glass of wine. We talked about harder things. She asked if I'd wanted children. I told her the truth I rarely admitted, that I'd never felt that pull, that maternal instinct everyone said was universal, that I'd dated men who wanted families, and I'd gone along with it because I thought I should want it too, but I'd always felt relieved when it didn't happen. "There's nothing wrong with that," she said firmly. "Not everyone is meant to be a parent. You create in other ways. Your buildings will outlive you. They'll shelter families for generations. That's its own kind of legacy." I asked her if she'd wanted more children after her husband died, if she'd thought about remarrying. She shook her head. "I had something beautiful with Thomas. I don't need to replicate it. And honestly, at 58, I'm more interested in experiencing new things than settling into something comfortable. I want to feel alive while I still can." The way she said it, the emphasis on alive, made something in my chest tighten. Dinner stretched into the evening. We were the last customers in the cafe. The staff was cleaning around us, giving us pointed looks. Finally, reluctantly, we asked for the check. I tried to pay. She insisted on splitting it. "This was a celebration," she said. We both contributed. We stepped outside into the cool night air. It was past midnight. The street was quiet, the shops closed, streetlights creating pools of warm light on the sidewalk. Neither of us had called a car yet. We stood there on the sidewalk, and I realized I didn't want the night to end. I didn't want to go back to my silent loft. I didn't want to leave her. "I had a wonderful time," I said. The words felt inadequate, like calling a sunset pretty, like calling the ocean wet. Lily stepped closer, close enough that I could see every detail of her face in the streetlight. The fine lines around her eyes, the silver in her hair catching the light, the way her lips curved when she smiled. She reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, her fingers grazing my cheek, lingering there for just a moment. The touch sent electricity down my spine. "Catherine," she said quietly. Her voice was low, intimate, meant only for me. "You are magnificent." My heart stopped, started again, pounding so hard I thought she must be able to hear it. "I'm enchanted by you," she continued, her hand still touching my face, her thumb brushing softly against my cheekbone. "From the first moment I saw you standing in that garden looking frustrated and fierce and beautiful, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening." She leaned in closer. Her lips were inches from my ear, her breath warm against my skin. "I want to kiss every inch of your beautiful body," she whispered, slowly. "I want to learn what makes you sigh, what makes you gasp. I want to discover all the ways you've never been touched properly." Time stopped. The world condensed to this moment, this woman, these words that were unraveling something inside me I'd kept tightly wound for 60 years. She pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, giving me space to breathe, to react, to run if I wanted to. "Is this okay?" she asked softly. "Tell me if I've misread this." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My entire vocabulary had vanished. All I could do was stare at her, my heart hammering, my skin burning where she'd touched me. And then she kissed me. She leaned in, slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. Her lips touched mine, soft and sure, and tasting like wine and promise. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't demanding. It was a question, an invitation. Her hand cupped my face gently, her thumb stroking my cheek. The kiss lasted maybe 5 seconds, maybe 5 hours. I don't know. Time lost all meaning. All I knew was the warmth of her mouth, the softness of her lips. The way my entire body came alive like someone had thrown a switch and suddenly electricity was flowing through circuits that had been dead for decades. When she pulled away, she was smiling, that beautiful, devastating smile. She stepped back, creating space between us, and I swayed slightly, unsteady on my feet. "Thank you for inviting me on this date," she said clearly, deliberately. Then she turned and walked to the curb where a car was pulling up, timing too perfect to be coincidence. She'd called it while I was paying the check. Before she got in, she looked back at me, her eyes bright in the streetlight. "I had a wonderful time," she called. Then she ducked into the car and was gone, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk in front of a closed cafe at midnight, my lips tingling, my entire world tilted on its axis. Date. She'd said date. She'd thought I was asking her on a date. She'd shown up in that dress and that lipstick and kissed me and told me I was magnificent and that she wanted me. Me. A 60-year-old workaholic architect who'd never felt this kind of desire in her entire life. I stood there for a full minute, maybe longer, unable to move. My hand drifted up to touch my lips, where I could still feel the ghost of her kiss. My skin was burning. My heart was racing. Every nerve in my body was singing. A car pulled up, the driver looking at me expectantly. I must have ordered it without realizing it, muscle memory from countless business dinners. I got in somehow, gave my address somehow, sat in the back seat staring out the window, seeing nothing, feeling everything. When I got home, I walked into my loft and closed the door and leaned against it, my hand pressed to my mouth. The silence that usually felt heavy now felt vast and echoing. I walked to my bedroom in a daze. I took off my clothes, the professional armor I'd worn, thinking this was a business meeting. I stood in my bathroom in my underwear, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked different. My cheeks were flushed. My lips were slightly swollen. My eyes were wide and bright with something I didn't recognize. I looked alive. I got into bed, turned off the lights, closed my eyes, tried to sleep. It was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, heard her voice, felt her hand on my cheek. Every inch of your beautiful body. The words echoed in my mind, over and over, setting something on fire low in my belly that I'd never felt before. Not like this. Not with this intensity. I replayed every moment of the evening. The way she'd looked at me across the table. The way her eyes had lingered on my mouth when I spoke. The way she'd leaned forward, genuinely interested in everything I said. The way she'd touched my hand when making a point. Casual contact that felt electric. Had I missed signals? Had I been so buried in my own loneliness that I'd completely misread what was happening? Or had I known, on some level, exactly what was happening and come anyway? You are magnificent. Nobody had ever called me that. Ever. My ex-boyfriends had called me attractive, smart, successful, but magnificent. That word suggested something more, something beyond the surface, something that saw all of me and still wanted more. I want to kiss every inch of your beautiful body. I rolled over, pressed my face into my pillow, trying to calm the heat flooding through me. When had anyone ever spoken to me like that? When had anyone looked at me with that kind of naked want? My relationships with men had been polite, respectful, carefully controlled. Nobody had ever looked at me like I was something they were hungry for. Around 3 a.m, a memory surfaced. One I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. I was 21, junior year of college, spring semester. There was a party off campus at a house some seniors were renting. I didn't usually go to parties. I was focused on my studies, on my internship, on building the foundation of my career. But my roommate had insisted, practically dragged me there, said I needed to have fun for once in my life. Too much cheap beer in red plastic cups, too many people crowded into too small a space, loud music I didn't recognize. I was in the kitchen trying to escape the noise, reaching for a bottle of wine someone had left on the counter. Another hand reached for the same bottle at the same time. Our fingers touched. I looked up. It was a girl I'd never seen before, visiting from another school, someone's friend from home. She had dark curly hair and green eyes and a smile that made my stomach flip. We talked, just talked at first, about nothing important, about the terrible music, about the even worse beer, about how neither of us really wanted to be there but had been dragged by well-meaning friends. Somehow we ended up in a corner of the back porch, away from the crowd, still talking. She stood close to me, closer than friends usually stood. She touched my arm when she laughed. I couldn't stop looking at her mouth, and then she kissed me, just leaned in and pressed her lips to mine, her hand sliding into my hair. I'd kissed boys before, a few of them. It had been nice, perfectly pleasant. This was different. This made my knees weak, made something in my chest crack open, made me want things I didn't have language for. I kissed her back. We kissed for what might have been minutes or hours, her hands in my hair, my hands on her waist, pulling her closer. Heat and softness and hunger. And then someone had called her name from inside. She'd pulled away, smiled at me, said she had to go. I'd watched her disappear back into the party, never got her name. Never saw her again. I'd left immediately after, walked back to my dorm in a daze, lay in my bed terrified and exhilarated and confused. And then, in the morning, I'd decided it meant nothing. I was drunk. We were both drunk. It was just a thing that happened at college parties. It didn't mean anything about who I was. I'd buried it, never told anyone. Dated a boy the next semester, a nice engineering student who took me to movies and kissed me politely and never made my heart race the way that nameless girl had. But I remembered now. Lying in my bed at 60 years old, I remembered. And I realized I'd spent nearly 40 years running from something I'd felt in that moment. running from a truth about myself I'd been too scared to examine. I wasn't broken. I wasn't incapable of desire. I'd just been desiring the wrong people. Oh God, Lily. What had I done? She thought we'd been on a date. She thought I was interested in her romantically, sexually. She'd kissed me thinking I wanted to be kissed. And I had wanted it. I'd wanted it so badly I could barely breathe thinking about it now. But I was 60 years old. I had a business to run, a reputation to maintain. I came from a conservative family. My father had been a deacon in the church before he died. My mother had spent her entire life teaching me how to be a proper woman. What would they think? What would my clients think? What would happen to my career if people knew? And beyond that, I didn't know how to be this person. I didn't know how to be a woman who wanted other women. I didn't have a framework for it. I didn't have language for it. I was 60 years old, and I was just figuring out something most people understood about themselves by the time they were 20. I couldn't do this. I couldn't see her again. It was too big, too risky, too terrifying. When my phone rang the next morning, pulling me out of a fitful half-sleep, it was Lily. Her name on my screen made my heart jump into my throat. I stared at it, paralyzed, until it went to voicemail. She called again in the afternoon. I was in my office, pretending to work, mostly staring at my computer screen without seeing it. I let it go to voicemail again. She texted that evening. "Hi, Catherine. I hope I didn't misread things last night. I had a wonderful time. Would love to see you again. Call me?" I stared at the text for 10 minutes. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I wanted to respond. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to see her again so badly it physically hurt. But the fear was bigger than the want. I put my phone down without responding. She called the next day, and the day after that. She texted gentle messages that never pushed, never demanded, just reminded me she was there, thinking about me, hoping I was okay. I didn't respond to any of them. I couldn't. Every time I thought about calling her back, about seeing her again, my chest got tight and my hands got cold and my breath came short. I was having panic attacks in my own office. Over what? Over a kiss? Over a woman who told me I was magnificent? No. Over the possibility that she was right, that I was magnificent, that I deserved to be wanted, that at 60 years old, I could still start over and become someone new. A week went by. The fear didn't fade. It grew. I threw myself into work with even more intensity than usual. I took on a new project. I scheduled meetings back to back. I stayed at the office until 11, midnight, trying to exhaust myself enough that I could sleep without dreaming of her. It didn't work. Every night, I dreamed of Lily, of her hands, of her mouth, of the way she'd looked at me, of those words whispered in the dark, every inch of your beautiful body. I woke up aching, went through my days like a ghost. My assistant asked if I was feeling all right. I said I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was coming apart. And then the flowers arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, a week and a half after that night outside the restaurant. I was in my office reviewing construction drawings when my assistant knocked and came in carrying a stunning arrangement. Birds of paradise and orchids and some kind of purple flower I didn't recognize, arranged in a beautiful ceramic vase that looked hand-thrown. "These just came for you," she said, setting them on my desk with barely concealed curiosity. "There's a card." She left. I stared at the flowers for a full minute before reaching for the small envelope. My hands were shaking. The card was simple, thick cream paper. Her handwriting, bold and clear. "Thinking of you. L." I sat at my desk holding that card and felt tears prick my eyes. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't demanding an explanation. She was just reminding me she was there, that she saw me, that whatever I was afraid of, she was willing to wait. I put the card in my desk drawer and tried to go back to work, but all day, every time I looked up, I saw those flowers, bright and beautiful and alive, like her. The next week, chocolates arrived. An elegant box from an expensive chocolatier, filled with dark chocolate truffles dusted with sea salt and cocoa. The card said simply, "Life is short. Eat dessert. L." I ate one truffle, then another. They were extraordinary, rich and complex and melting on my tongue. I sat in my office savoring chocolate and crying, which was absolutely ridiculous behavior for a 60-year-old professional woman. The week after that, a package arrived at my office. Larger this time. My assistant brought it in with raised eyebrows but didn't ask questions. I waited until she left, then opened it with trembling hands. Inside was tissue paper, layers of it in soft blue. And beneath the tissue paper, folded carefully, was a nightgown. Silk. Deep midnight blue. Beautiful and elegant and utterly sensual. Not vulgar, not crude, just beautiful. The kind of thing you wore when you wanted to feel beautiful, when you wanted to be seen as beautiful. There was a note tucked into the folds. For when you're ready to feel as beautiful as you are, no pressure, take all the time you need. L. I sat at my desk holding that nightgown, the silk cool and soft against my fingers, and I cried. Really cried. Not polite tears. Deep, gasping sobs that came from somewhere I'd kept locked away for decades. Because it was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. Because she wasn't demanding, she wasn't pushing, she was just holding space for me to figure out who I was, what I wanted. She was telling me I had a choice. But I still couldn't call her. The fear was too big. The risk felt too great. I'd spent 60 years building a life that made sense, that looked right from the outside. I couldn't tear it all down for something I didn't understand, for feelings I couldn't name, for a woman I'd known for only a few months. I threw myself back into work even harder. I took on 2 new residential projects I didn't have time for. I was in meetings constantly, on conference calls, visiting sites, reviewing plans. I worked until I was too exhausted to think. I told myself I was fine. I told myself I'd made the right choice. But I wasn't fine. I dreamed about her every single night, woke up aching, went through my days like I was wading through water. Everything felt muted and gray. Food had no taste. Music was just noise. Even my work, the thing that had always given me purpose, felt hollow. I was dying. Not physically, spiritually. I was withering away, and I knew it, and I couldn't seem to stop it. The 4th week after that night, lavender arrived. Fresh lavender in a beautiful burlap-wrapped pot, the kind you could plant in a garden. The card said, "This one's a drama queen like your clients, but she blooms beautifully when she's happy." L. I took the lavender home, planted it on my tiny balcony, watered it, talked to it the way I'd seen Lily talk to her plants, and every time I looked at it, I thought of her. I was losing this battle. I knew it. The wall I'd built around my heart was crumbling one gift at a time, one memory at a time, one dream at a time. 2 months after that night outside the restaurant, I had to go back to the house in the hills. Marcus called, apologetic but firm. Jennifer wanted to add a small studio space off the main house, a place where she could paint and work on her pottery. It would require some modifications to the existing structure, some additions, and it would mean adjusting part of the landscaping near the house where the addition would go. I knew Lily's company had the ongoing maintenance contract for the property. I knew there was a good chance I'd run into her if I went during the day. So I scheduled my site visit for late afternoon, after 5. Her crews worked mornings. They'd be gone by the time I got there. It was safe. I arrived at the house at 5:30. The drive up the winding road through the hills was beautiful, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. The house looked stunning, exactly as I'd designed it, the glass walls reflecting the sky. The garden Lily had created was even more beautiful than I remembered. Everything had grown in, matured. The Japanese maple had turned brilliant red with the season. The pond reflected the changing sky. It was perfect, but it felt empty, like something was missing. I let myself in with the key Marcus had sent. The house was silent, vacant. They were in Europe for a month, wouldn't be back until November. I had the place to myself. I walked through slowly, taking measurements, making notes on my tablet. The studio would go here, off the east side of the house, floor-to-ceiling windows to catch the morning light, a separate entrance so Jennifer could come and go without disturbing the main house. We'd need to move that section of the garden, relocate some of the plantings. I'd call Lily's office, leave a message with her receptionist, keep it professional. I finished my measurements and walked out to the back of the property. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, the sky starting to turn pink and orange at the edges. The garden was even more spectacular in this light. Everything glowed. The pond was a mirror of the sky. I could see why the clients loved it so much. I walked to the edge of the infinity pool, the one that seemed to drop off into the valley below. Stood there watching the light change, the day turning into evening. And I let myself think about her. Really think about her. Not push it away. Not bury it under work and fear. I thought about that night at the restaurant, about how alive I'd felt, about how she'd made me laugh, made me think, made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. About how, for those few hours, I hadn't felt like a 60-year-old woman whose life was more than half over. I'd felt young, possible, like the future was still unwritten. I thought about her hands, strong and capable and gentle, about her voice, warm and certain, about the way she looked at me like I was something precious, about those words she'd whispered. You are magnificent. When had anyone ever made me feel magnificent? When had anyone looked at me with that kind of hunger and tenderness combined? My relationships with men had been polite transactions, affection without passion, companionship without fire. I'd thought that was normal. That passion was something from movies and books, not real life. But Lily had looked at me with passion, had told me she wanted to kiss every inch of my body slowly, and for the first time in my 60 years, I'd felt what it meant to be desired, to be wanted, not for what I could provide or what I represented, but for myself, for my mind and my body and my soul. And I'd run away from it, like a coward. I'd spent 2 months hiding, letting fear make my choices for me. And for what? To preserve what? A life that felt empty? A reputation that meant nothing if I was dying inside? Safety that felt like suffocation? That sunset is beautiful. The voice came from behind me. My heart stopped. I spun around, nearly losing my balance on the pool's edge. Lily was standing about 20 feet away, near the garden shed that housed the pool equipment. She was wearing her work clothes, dirt-stained canvas pants, a t-shirt with the sleeves cut off. Her silver hair was messy, tucked behind her ears. Her hands were covered in soil. She had a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She looked tired. She looked beautiful. She looked like everything I'd been running from and everything I wanted. "But you," she said, walking slowly toward me. Her dark eyes locked on mine, "are 1,000 times more beautiful than any sunset." I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to touch but not touching, giving me space, always giving me space to choose. "I know you've been avoiding me," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the hurt underneath. "I understand. I came on too strong that night. I misread the situation. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I managed. My voice cracked on the words. "You didn't misread anything." She looked at me, really looked at me, searching my face for truth. "Then why did you disappear, Catherine? Why didn't you return my calls? Why didn't you at least tell me you weren't interested instead of leaving me wondering what I did wrong?" "Because I'm terrified," I whispered. The words came out broken, raw. "I'm 60 years old, Lily. I've never done this. I've never wanted someone like this. I don't know how to be this person." "What person?" "Someone who gets to want what she wants." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She took a step closer. "Catherine," she said, her voice thick with emotion. You are magnificent. You are brilliant and talented and beautiful, and you deserve everything good in this world. You deserve to be wanted. You deserve to feel cherished. You deserve to be with someone who looks at you and sees a miracle. Is that how you see me? My voice was barely a whisper. That's exactly how I see you. From the first moment I met you, standing in that garden looking fierce and frustrated and so beautiful, you took my breath away. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. I've tried. I've told myself you're not interested, that I should move on. But I can't. I felt something break open inside my chest, something that had been locked away for so long I'd forgotten it was there. I can't stop thinking about you either, I admitted. I dream about you every night. I see you everywhere. Those flowers you sent, the chocolates, the nightgown, they were the kindest things anyone has ever done for me. Then why are you running? Because I'm scared. Because I don't know who I am if I'm this person. Because my whole life I've done what I was supposed to do, been who I was supposed to be. And you make me want to be someone different, someone brave, someone who chooses what she wants instead of what's safe. And that terrifies me. Lily took another step closer. We were inches apart now. I could see the tears on her cheeks, the gold flecks in her dark eyes, the pulse beating in her throat. Being scared doesn't make you a coward, she said softly. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do it anyway. I don't know how. Then let me show you. She reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away, to step back, to run like I'd been running for 2 months. Her hand cupped my face, warm and gentle and real. Her thumb brushed across my cheekbone, catching a tear I hadn't known I was crying. Tell me to stop, she whispered. Tell me you don't want this and I'll walk away. I'll never bother you again. But if you want this, if you want me even a fraction as much as I want you, then stop running. Let yourself feel this. Let yourself have this. I looked into her eyes, saw the want there, saw the tenderness, saw the patience. She'd waited 2 months. She'd given me space. She'd sent gifts without demanding anything in return. She'd held the door open and let me choose whether to walk through it. Kiss me, I whispered. She did. This kiss was different from that first one on the sidewalk 2 months ago. That one had been a promise, a question, a possibility. This one was a homecoming. This one was yes. This one was finally choosing what I wanted instead of what I feared. Her lips were soft and sure. Her hand cradled my face like I was something precious. Her other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer, and I went willingly, eagerly, pressing against her like I could merge our bodies through sheer want. I kissed her back with 60 years of hunger I hadn't known I was carrying, with all the passion I'd never felt with anyone else, with all the desire I'd buried and denied and run from. I kissed her like she was air and I'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both of us were crying. She pressed her forehead against mine, both of us breathing hard, her hand still cupping my face. Come inside with me, she said softly. Let me show you how beautiful you are. Let me show you what it feels like to be wanted. I nodded. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe, but I could choose. And I chose her. We walked into the empty house, the beautiful house I'd designed for other people to build a life in. The whole western wall was glass, overlooking the garden and the pool and the valley beyond. The sunset was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. She turned to face me, taking both my hands in hers. I need you to know something, she said. Whatever happens next, whatever we do, you're in control. We go as fast or as slow as you need. We stop whenever you say stop. This is your choice, Catherine, every moment of it. I don't want to stop, I said. I've been stopping my whole life. I'm done stopping. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. She reached up and pulled the clip from my hair, the one I always wore to keep everything neat and controlled. My hair fell around my shoulders, and she ran her fingers through it, her touch gentle. "You're always so contained," she said softly, her fingers combing through my hair. "So controlled, so careful. I want you to let go, just for tonight, just with me. Let go of all the fear and the should and the what-ifs, just feel." She kissed me again, slower this time, deeper. Her hands were in my hair, on my back, learning the shape of me. I felt something unlock inside my chest, something I'd been holding tight for so long I'd forgotten it was there. She pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, her hands framing my face. "Tell me what you want," she whispered. "I want to feel the way you make me feel," I said. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to know what it's like to be desired the way you desire me." "Then let me love you," she said. And there, in that beautiful house I'd designed with its walls of glass and its view of the sunset, Lily kept her promise. She loved me. She was patient. She was gentle. She paid attention to every sound I made, every catch of breath, adjusting her touch to what made me sigh, what made me gasp. She took her time, lavishing attention on parts of my body I'd thought were just functional, just there. She made me feel beautiful. She made me feel desired. She made me feel alive. I won't describe the details. They're sacred. They're mine. But I will say this. For the first time in my 60 years, I understood what all the songs and poems and movies were about. I understood why people made foolish choices for love, why they burned bridges and risked everything, because this feeling of being wholly seen and wholly wanted and wholly cherished was worth any cost. She touched me like I was a miracle, kissed me like she'd been hungry for me her whole life, looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. And for the first time, I believed it. I felt it. I felt magnificent. When it was over, when we lay together on the floor, wrapped in a throw blanket from the couch, both of us breathing hard, both of us crying, watching the last light fade from the sky, I finally understood what had been missing from my life. Not a person, not specifically, but this feeling of being desired, of being wanted for exactly who I was, of being touched with intention and hunger and reverence, of choosing pleasure instead of duty, of choosing myself. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. "I've never been better in my life," I said, and I meant it, every word. We stayed there until the sky was full dark and the stars came out. And then we got dressed slowly, reluctantly, and went back out to the garden. Sat on the edge of the pool with our feet in the water, holding hands, watching the lights of the city below. "What happens now?" I asked. "Whatever you want to happen," she said. "I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to go. I don't want you to go. I don't ever want you to go." "Then I'll stay." The next few weeks were a revelation. Lily was patient with my fear, with my uncertainty about how to navigate this new identity I was claiming. She let me set the pace. We had dinner at her cottage, a small house filled with plants and color and life. She cooked for me, nothing fancy, but everything made with care. We sat on her porch and watched sunsets. We talked about everything and nothing. And yes, we made love, often. And every single time, I felt more awake, more alive, more real. Every time, I discovered something new about my body, about pleasure, about what it meant to be touched with intention. But I still hadn't told anyone. My assistant knew I was seeing someone. She'd noticed the flowers, the way I smiled at my phone. But I deflected her questions. I wasn't ready. It was Lily who finally, gently, pushed me. We were at her place on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee in her garden. She was repotting herbs, her hands in the soil. I was supposedly reading the newspaper, but mostly just watching her, the way the morning light caught her hair, the way her hands moved with such confidence. "There's a gallery opening next Friday," she said, not looking up from the basil she was transplanting. A friend of mine is showing her work. I'd love to take you, as my date, publicly. My chest tightened. You want me to go with you? Where people you know will see us? Yes. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I want to hold your hand and introduce you to my friends and not pretend you're just my architect. Catherine, I'm 58 years old. I spent years being invisible after my husband died. I'm not interested in hiding anymore. I'm in love with you. And I want the world to know. The words hung in the air. I'm in love with you. She'd said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I'm in love with you too, I said, the words coming out shaky but true. Then come with me. Let me be proud to be yours. I went. I wore a dress. I held her hand. And when her friends came over, she introduced me as her partner. The word felt strange in my mouth when I said it, but also right. I came out to my family over Thanksgiving. My brother was shocked but kind. My sister-in-law hugged me. My nephew shrugged and asked if we could eat now. I came out to my colleagues slowly. Some were wonderful, some were cold. I lost one major client. It hurt, but it didn't destroy me, because I had Lily. And for the first time in my life, I had myself. I'm 62 now. Lily and I live together in her cottage with the garden. I still work, still design beautiful homes. But now I come home to a home of my own, to a woman who lights up when I walk through the door, who knows how I take my coffee, who makes me laugh, who loves me. People ask if I regret not figuring this out sooner. I don't. Those decades taught me what I didn't want. They taught me to recognize a gift when it arrived. They taught me that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. I was 60 years old when I learned what it meant to be desired. When I learned that courage means choosing love over fear. That being magnificent means being yourself, fully, finally, without apology. And every single day, I choose her. I choose this life. I choose myself. And it is magnificent.